going to help the committee to decide on the stakeholders and even on the steps to carry going forward. I have invited the leadership intentionally so that they're not, land land is very emotive. So I've invited them intentionally so that they are at par with the discussions at hand. So that we are making any decisions, it should be an informed decision. I'm happy that you've invited the attorney because maybe there are areas that would require legal advice. So as I said, it is informal. So feel free to explain all the details that will help us move forward. I will also give time to members to maybe ask one or two questions that will help them make an informed decision. So it's not a grilling session, it's not normal committee sessions. We just want to get the information. Once it goes into the committee of lands, they will develop the work plan on how they will proceed. So because this matter is touching on issues money, we call the CC Finance, is touching on the issues of land. Why the CC for lands is here, Jerome. And it's a legal issue also coming in, so I'm happy that you invited the county attorney. So I don't know who will come first, but I also want you to take advantage of the situation after presenting this. We also touch on the issue of request by EACC for some land to the regional headquarters, and the one for Meditas, I think you already presented yourself before the committee. So maybe those two, but the gist of the matter is the ONDIEK thing. I don't know if they're going to be the lead, the CC member for lands or was it George? You can agree. So the floor is yours. You were not unanswered. That thing is not being recorded, so feel free.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, and honorable members. Sorry, we are also late, but we just got caught up in another meeting that refused to end. But anyway, we are here. So maybe, I'll probably read, I think I had prepared something, but since I was in another meeting, I was not able to carry my file with me. I'm just trying to get some documents that will guide me in terms of making this particular presentation. Chair, you will just allow me to read some, like you said, the informal. We had a meeting that we had with the National Housing Corporation some times back. Allow me to just read through quickly this. That during this particular meeting, the National Housing Corporation gave a brief background of the debt owed to the National Housing Corporation by the county government of Kisumu. This is a debt that was owed pre-devolution, that is during the municipality's period. The National Housing Corporation informed them that the Kisumu Municipal Council agreed to set a debt owed to the National Housing Corporation by the council. The Municipal Council offered Arena Estate a settlement of the negotiated debt of Kenya shillings 525 million. It was agreed that failure to settle the debt by end of 2010, the National Housing Corporation would reinstate the loan to run from December 2009. Evaluation of Arena Estate, and I think that's important, evaluation of Arena Estate was done by the county government that returned a value of 585 million. That is during those days. 585 million, it was agreed that the transfer of the estate would settle the debt. However, the transfer was not successful. Before the deal could be settled, devolution came in and the transfer stalled. As a result of the failure of transfer of Arena Estate to National Housing Corporation, the debt continued to accrue interest. In a memorandum of understanding dated 15th of September the year 2020 between the county government of Kisumu and the National Housing Corporation, parties agreed to settle a debt at a negotiated amount of 980,432. However, due to failure to settle the debt with respect to the MOU, the debt owed to the National Housing Corporation by the county government of Kisumu rose and stood at an approximate value of 1.4 billion as at July 2024. During his second term, His Excellency Governor Nyong'o engaged the corporation with a view of resolving this debt issue. He promised to swap ONDIEK estate for a debt instead of Arena estate. The county government invited the corporation to undertake a valuation of ONDIEK estate. The county government was willing to transfer the property based on a negotiated amount of 980 million. A joint valuation of the estate was undertaken, which gave a figure of 1.071 billion or 1,071,184,000. The corporation requested for an independent valuation by the government valuer. The valuation of the government valuer returned a value of 654. Chair and members, I'm reading through this and you can clearly see a variation of values depending on which valuer is doing the valuation. First of all, it starts at 980. Another valuer comes in and says it is 1.0 billion, and another one valuer comes and says it is 780. So I just wanted to record that so that as we progress in terms of where we strike a balance, then it would be important to understand the reason as to why we reached a consensus. So the county government complained that this was an undervaluation. Then the National Housing Corporation and the county government agreed to engage the Institute of Surveyors of Kenya to conduct an independent valuation of ONDIEK estate. The value of the Institute of Surveyors of Kenya returned a value of 780 million. Against the background, the National Housing Corporation team requested that the discussion in the meeting resolved the debt issue with finality because different figures kept on coming up. The meeting agreed that the debt swap is the most suitable debt resolution approach. The meeting then further agreed that the National Housing Corporation and the county government of Kisumu needed to agree on the value of ONDIEK estate in order to progress the process of debt settlement. It was also agreed that parties agree on a finality on the debt value. After deliberation, it was agreed that the debt be capped at a value of 980 million in the view of the three varying valuation figures that had been put forward. Thereafter, then, during these particular discussions, we had various options. And that I want to state the alternative options that we had. Alternative one, that the meeting was to agree and adopt the three values of the ONDIEK estate. The average of the three values was approximately 835 million. ONDIEK estate was to be transferred to the National Housing Corporation, and the county government of Kisumu determined how to address the difference between the value of the third estate and the debt value. What that simply said is that we had there was an average. If you look at those valuation figures, the average was 835. But then the most important thing was that then, since we had agreed to cap a value of 980, then it meant that the county government was going to pay up the difference. But this was rejected because we said we didn't have money, which means we were to add up 830 to get to 980, we were to add up 150. Since we didn't have money and they were interested in making sure that this thing is resolved very fast, we said that that option is not possible. So there was the alternative two, that the meeting at the Ministry of Land Valuation and after parties find a way to develop, to how to pay the differences. The county government of Kisumu rejected the property value and by the Ministry of Land as being too low. Being a developer itself, the National Housing Corporation was opposed to the idea of jointly for a developer. National Housing Corporation stated that it cannot be involved in an exercise to find a person to pay off debts owed to it. After deliberation, the National Housing Corporation and the county government of Kisumu agreed to adopt a value of 980 million as the value of ONDIEK. This value was assigned by the joint valuation on the land which ONDIEK is estimated. So in terms of what arising from that particular meeting, the county government agreed to settle at a negotiated amount of 980 million as the value of the debt. The county to swap for the negotiated debt. In other words, that then if that value is agreed upon, then the debt will stand settled. Then once the debt swap is effected, the debt is considered as settled. That the National Housing Corporation to redevelop ONDIEK Estate in accordance with the zoning standards of Kisumu City, and that within 2 weeks, that is of that particular meeting, the county government and the National Housing Corporation to get the concurrence of the cabinet and the National Housing Corporation board respectively on the debt swap approval. So it was agreed that we present the decision of this particular meeting to our cabinet, and then the National Housing Corporation was also to present that decision to their board, confirm that they their board, and it was approved. So it was our side. We sat in cabinet. The cabinet deliberated and also accepted and agreed to settle the debt, and then later transmit the decision of cabinet to the county assembly for also the county assembly to make their decision. That within that particular meeting, that the CCM of Lands was directed to do a cab memo on the debt swap proposal, and then the National Housing and the county government to reconvene in 3 weeks to report on the outcome of the concurrence. Chair, honorable members, I think through that particular reading of the minutes of the meeting that we had last time, I just given a quick history of where all this started and some of the key issues, especially on the area of how we settled at 980 million for the debt swap, and also the steps we have taken. And the reason why we are here is that also we are seeking the concurrence of the county assembly with respect to the decision that we have made. So probably, with your permission, Honorable Speaker, maybe my colleagues could chip in case there are some elements of that particular deliberation that I could have left out.
Maybe before you give your colleague, I want you to make it clear to the members. You know, you mentioned some figures here. And at one point you were saying that the county government will bridge the gap. I'm talking of 1.3 or 1.4 billion debt.
Yes.
The value as at now, let's pick 980.
Yes, 980.
Is it still that the county government will bridge the gap if the county assembly is in concurrence with what you are saying? That is one.
Yeah, okay.
If the county government will still bridge the gap. And then, no, I think that one you answered what I want to ask about the board meeting at NHC. I think you confirmed that they met. Though in your letter that you submitted, it's saying that the NHC was supposed to meet in 2 weeks' time. The cabinet was also supposed to meet in 2 weeks' time.
Yes.
But we don't have anything confirming apart from your presentation now that they had met and agreed. How do we know that they agreed? But anyway, you can answer the first one.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. The first one is that there will be no more payment in terms of transfers of money to any party. The agreed amount was that 980 million was the settled amount. Each party puts into their books that is the settled amount, and then the matter again is will be closed. Chair, I also wish, which I did not bring to this, and that my colleagues probably will expound more because that is their area, that actually this was a matter that is in court. And the National Housing Corporation with the county government sought for an out-of-court settlement. So this exercise we are undertaking is an ADR approach to resolving this matter. Actually, the matter came up 2 weeks before. The matter came up this month, and there was, our legal people will give us more detail. But anyway, to answer your question, yes, there will be no more transfer of any money to any party once this amount is agreed. Once this thing is resolved, because that was the settled amount. Then secondly, I think I would just want to speak about it. These are minutes of a meeting that we held. So when we're talking about 2 weeks, that was 2 weeks in December 2024. So thereafter, the National Housing Corporation met, and that one they confirmed to us in a meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, that their board met and confirmed. Kisumu County also, we had our cabinet meeting. The cabinet also met. And so those are follow-ups of, because I'm reading minutes of an old meeting, sorry.
You wanted a rejoinder from Waziri. Can I give Waziri to do a rejoinder, then we open it once and for all? So Waziri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, right. Thank you, Honorable Speaker and members. I don't have much to say. I think it's my colleague who have a lot to say, the Department of Lands, who know the full story. And of course, the county attorney, if you allow us, perhaps will need to speak before the members because he has the details of the court case. For us at the county treasury, it's a very simple thing in the sense that it is just one of those very convoluted debts that we have to deal with, very complicated, because it arises from the former municipality and obligations between the former municipality and other parties. But also, like we keep on saying, it is also one of the things that was not resolved by the transition authority. If the matter had not ended up in court, we probably would have insisted on a different way of handling it. But it ended up in court, and there was a court order that was imposed on the county government to pay NHC a certain amount of money. And so that's how we see it. Whether the transition authority handled it properly, it perhaps came up in court. Maybe our colleagues will brief us that those matters were ventilated in court, because there are also questions as to whether these estates were built by the National Housing Corporation as grants or loans to the former local authorities. There are those who argue that they were actually grants and they were not loans. But those could have been all ventilated in court. What is important to us at the county treasury is that there is finally a court order. The culmination of everything is a court order which imposes on us a liability to meet. And when we are presented with an opportunity to meet that liability by way of swapping property, that is always an option, as long as we are not getting the short end of the stick in that trade-off. When the valuations were done, like my colleague has read, on top of the valuations, remember, the National Housing Corporation had also been collecting some rent from those estates. So again, some reconciliations were done in terms of how much money has the National Housing Corporation collected. And those figures were also presented as part of court proceedings, leading to the final amount. In fact, I remember that, and my colleague has spoken about it, there was a valuation of the estate that was even placing it at a lower value than what we have ended up paying. So for us at the Treasury, this liability would not be removed by any other means unless a superior court. So we have to pay. And if we get a deal that gives us a fair valuation of our assets in exchange, then we definitely support. And especially because the National Housing Corporation has not even gone into interest and penalties and so on. If they do, then this will become maybe 1.5, 1.6 billion shillings. So it makes a lot of economic sense to trade off that property and avoid paying 1.6 billion. As to whether it was a legitimate debt and all that stories, those may have only been canvassed in court. Because we have the same situation with many debts in the county, some of which we question to date, but they have ended up in court. Finally, I agree with my colleague that the understanding we have right now is that the swap of the estate will be the final transaction. There will be no other cash transfer. And I remember when this team from NHC came to see His Excellency the Governor last week, was it last week? Or 2 weeks ago, the Governor also asked this question, that are we going to have any other financial transfers? The answer given by NHC was no financial transfers. Very finally, Mr. Speaker, because in your opening remarks, you spoke about the other estates that will be, particularly those that will be handed over back to us by the NHC. I think it will be important that these estates, we know whether they are coming back to the county government or, because this is also the time that governments lose property. It is particularly the ones that NHC will hand over. I think we need a quick determination on whether the tenants there are rent-paying tenants or they are tenant purchase agreements, because there is a possibility that some of these estates coming back may be appropriated by the people sitting there. Even those who are not on tenant purchase may pretend that they were, and will lose the estates. That's all I could say for now. But I would really plead with you to allow the attorney to speak, because he has a lot of information.
Yes, attorney.
Allow me to greet everybody in the house and say good afternoon. I'm most grateful. I think it helps to always try to understand where we are with as much detail as possibly we can bring on board in subjects such as this. So when Waziri told me this morning to try also and scout out for any files I could bring, I said, well, I come, but also because I have almost an institutional memory in the person of my colleague Duncan, I asked him along, I hope you welcome him, and that he can be available to make other further clarifications pertinent to this discussion. I'll take just about 2 minutes. And the thing to say is that on the whole, what we are dealing with is a behemoth. Just about 2011, before our full stride into devolution, I think the municipality had a lot of problems. And to get further access to the then local government funds, they had to be clear about certain loans they owned. I think they owned monies to LAP fund in unpaid pensions that, no, oh, okay.
I think just give him, he said 2 minutes. Honorable Kanga. Honorable Seth Kanga, the county attorney asked for it. It's important we are not interrogating this team here. We are here, I've requested them to come here informally to give us the background of this issue, so that when it comes for time for interrogation, Honorable Seth Kanga, you have already wasted 1 minute, you would have been through. Just hold your horses. Just hold your horses, Honorable Seth Kanga. Honorable Seth Kanga, just resume your seat. I promise to give you time. I promise to give you time. Just hold your horses, Honorable Seth Kanga. Just resume your seat, Honorable Seth Kanga. Just hold your horses. I promise I will give you time. The county attorney had asked for 2 minutes. I think by now you would be through. Whatever he says, just give him his 2 minutes. It is, he has the privilege to say what he wants to say. You will have a, let's agree, if any member, whether from the executive or county assembly, Honorable Seth Kanga, just allow me to give direction. Let's agree that we will respect the contribution of each person here, whether you like that contribution or not. Just listen to it. Then when it comes to your time, you will respond as appropriately. So it's your time, County Attorney.
I'm sorry, Chief Whip. But then what happened is that when then a debt swap, because this is not the first one, when then a debt swap was achieved on that part with LAP fund, and Makasembo was transferred to LAP fund, NHC tried to stop that transaction and said, we also have a judgment that then was about R1 billion based on estates that we developed. So there are a number of estates. And they tried to say not even Makasembo should go to LAP fund. So they took both the county government and the LAP fund to court. And that is how, in the culmination of the order, we come to what we are today about swapping ONDIEK estate. Because at that point, NHC in that history had demanded all the 5 estates that they developed. ONDIEK, Makasembo, Arena, Arwings Kodek, and I think the last one, Rich and Mosque. That demanded for all of them. And we lost, or the municipality lost that case in that history. So that was about R1 billion in loss. So when this one was coming in, the settlement for LAP fund, they took the county, because now it was now a devolution, and that is civil suit number 239 of 2014. They now took LAP fund and the county government to court. So it is in resolution of that that they said, okay, Makasembo is already gone. Our board is willing to talk. Check out what you have that can settle our original debt with you. That was at about 980 billion. And I think that has been discussed. That board actually, I think, met in July. And I think by November, they had intimated that they were willing to settle in entire and full settlement of the loan owed to them subsequent to that judgment of about 980 million shillings at the exchange of ONDIEK estate. And just as I said, I have here one of my attorneys. He is very good because he went through the municipality experience to date. He would remember the part of the intricacies. And if you want further clarification, I would beg that you can also allow him to make his contribution. But that is how then we end up here with ONDIEK estate. I'm most sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we'll bring him board at the right time. So now is your time. Honorable Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few issues to raise. One, the main reason why we're here is to get the information about this. And I'll start by saying that we have a summary write-up. We really wanted the detailed information that was given by CC Lands so that we are together on this. How you arrived at 980 million and what was developed in Migosi. Because this loan was advanced to develop Migosi site and scheme, we also need to know what did we develop in Migosi and the scheme estate. 2, NHC all along has been collecting rent. We also need to know how much have they collected against what they want from us. 3, you brought this to the assembly for approval, but you've done other handing overs to other entities without passing through the assembly. Why do you think it wise to bring this to this assembly? Lastly, how do you plan to deal with TP, the tenants that bought their houses in this exchange? Thank you.
I think you can take notes so that you take maybe 3.
May I seek clarification? The honorable member stated we are done other handing overs. Probably we
I think he's referring to Makasembo and Anderson.
Okay.
If I'm right, yeah.
Okay.
So can you just take notes and we get 3 members to respond and I get another note? Honorable Sami?
Mr. Speaker, mine is just. Thank you, Whip and Speaker. Mine is simple. Did you do public participation?
I think it's a rejoinder to what the majority leader has talked about. Mr. Chair, the county government of Kisumu, especially on these issues, has been doing things very unprocedural. And I want to ask a question. When Makasembo was handed over to the national government for the development of affordable housing, they were collecting, the National Housing Corporation was collecting money from Makasembo estate. The figures are not indicated. How much money did they collect from Makasembo before it was brought down and demolished? And now developments are coming up. ONDIEK estate in particular, they should be particular, Speaker. How much money have they raised from ONDIEK estate since they started collecting money from those cities? Arena estate, and even the other said estates. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, another critical aspect is coming in. As far as public participation is concerned in the development of affordable housing program. And I think the county attorney should address this, because this one is captured in law as far as the development of a county, as the development of affordable housing is concerned. And Mr. County, you should go back to public participation provisions as far as affordable housing is concerned. It's a provision in the Constitution of Kenya where public participation must be taken into consideration. And if you go to section 1, sabbatical 2, provisions of the County Government Act, as far as, and that section talks about public participation before any matter is brought to this house. And the county attorney should read from sabbatical 1 to section 3 up to section 9, where it outlines the roles of the county assembly as far as public participation is concerned in relation to the affordable housing scheme, whereby it is required that the assembly does public participation. Before you brought this document to the county assembly, did you conduct any public participation in the said estates? Because they have been paying rents to the county government, to the national housing corporations. They are stakeholders. And these decisions, these policy decisions, is about to affect them. And the county assembly will be required to do public participation in the said estates to reaffirm whether you conducted public participation. Here, in this case, it was not conducted, because I have never seen any attachment where the residents of ONDIEK, the residents of Arguings, the residents of Arena were told how the policy of the county government is going to affect them. Another issue, Chair, is that when they were handing over Anderson Estate, a document such as this was not brought to this house. Because when Anderson was handed over, I was a member representing Market Milimani Ward, sitting in this side assembly. Makasemo also was handed over without the indulgence of this honorable house. Why is it this time you have decided to indulge the contribution of this house in relation to the said matter, Mr. Chair? Those are the issues which I would like, I will request to you, Chair, that the CC in charge of housing and land, and equally the county attorney, responds to them. Because in any case, Mr. Chair, the residents of the said estates will go to court for judicial review. I think we will go nowhere, because their involvement was never required from the beginning of the process. Even when you were negotiating in court on their behalf, did you involve them? And why do you want to involve the assembly, the people who directly represent those people, without first involving them? Those are my contributions, Chair.
Thank you so much. Though I've realized most of your questions had been asked by the leader of majority, and the one of public presented by Honorable Sami. So I want to request, if somebody has asked a question, just let it go. You can ask a new thing.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Chair, I believe the reason why we are not answered is we are doing a consultative kind of meeting, whereas the decision or some decisions were made or are about to be made by the executive. Here, I think where you have not done the correct thing, or where you are about to do it, or where we do not understand, we need to ventilate on and maybe come up with a solution which is supposed to be owned collectively. There are questions that have been asked by my colleagues, which I believe next time when we come back, we should agree on them. There are very many questions than answers for what has happened. And therefore, I'll ride on what my colleague said about the rent. Just to be very precise, in order to help each other, you should furnish us with certain information, e.g., how much has been said, but when was this transfer to the National Housing Corporation done by the defunct municipal? Then we'll be able also to do our own calculation, and then we can agree how much was being charged per house per unit. And are you aware that ONDIEK had two categories? One, rental, that was supposed to be collected by National Housing Corporation. There was also a hire purchase. What are you going to do with those who own houses there? Was that also factored in, so that we read from the same page, knowing very well what we're going to do with these desperate Kenyans? There is also this issue of whether the estate was built by the grant or loan. That actually ought to have been in your domain now, and you know what you are arguing, why we are paying, or why we are doing the swap. We cannot do a swap where the estate was built through a grant or loan. If you do not know whether it was a grant or loan, then it is wrong for you to have made a move to transfer the estate under the pretext that we owe the National Housing Corporation some money. But again, the money you are claiming, it is not for the ONDIEK estate, it was for Migosi and another estate, what I don't know. That is why you want to do the swap to pay the debt that built this estate. So we need to know that very, very well, so that we should be able to defend this collectively once it is confirmed that the move we are making is right. Ours is to safeguard the interest of the public and the interest of the which I believe is also your interest. Let us do the right thing to help this county. In regard to the attorney's office, true, it has not been very, they just don't show up in court, and we end up in a very embarrassing situation. Now that we have a new attorney, I don't know whether there will be change to that kind of bad character. Thank you.
Can I give a response to the first? I'm coming for the next lot, Honorable Were, I've noticed you. I think I give a chance to Waziri to respond to the first lot, and I take the second lot. But Honorable members, let's agree, it is not interrogation. We are meeting informally to get the gist of information so that we make a decision way forward. It is not, we are not interrogating. We want information. That's why I told you be free to tell us your mind so that we work on it together going forward. So it's your time. You can respond to that, then I take the second lot.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think I'll give the county attorney an opportunity to respond first, bearing in mind questions of Makasembo and Anderson has come up, and he's told us he has more institutional memory about this. So probably arising from that history, then we can now see how we have landed where we are. So I think I'll give the attorney time to respond to that. Then I can pick in issues arising about the current situation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the chair. I'm Duncan Ogango. I'm an assistant counsel in the County Attorney. I wish to clarify, number one, it was been asked whether this was a loan or a grant. It was a loan to the government of Kenya, but a grant, it was a grant, a loan, a grant to the government of Kenya, but a loan to the councils. My point is, the World Bank decided to do low-cost houses between the year 1960s and 70s. So then available records indicate that the money was given by World Bank to NHC because it was the body in charge with the issue of development houses as a grant. But then NHC transferred those funds to local authorities in form of loans. Kisumu, Mombasa, and other beneficial municipalities benefited in that regard. That is one. Number two, they took over management of those houses in 1992, when most of us were still in primary school, if I may say. At the time that we were contesting the issue of debt, they had purposed to take over the management of those houses. In the year 2005, the council went to court when they advertised the houses for sale. And we managed to get an order stopping them from the sale. Now, the matter went on for years and years. During that period of time, we were approaching devolution, and then there were instructions by the national government that before the municipalities transited from the then governance structures, they had to clear their pending loans. So in that regard, a letter was issued from the Treasury requiring that the municipalities clear their loans. So then municipal entered into arrangements with those statutory bodies, Lab Trust and Lab Fund, where a debt swap was agreed on. So that is how Makasembo and Anderson went. Actually, Makasembo and Anderson went before devolution. What happened when you were the MCA was actually ceremonial. The actual paperwork had been done. At this, the agreement, the original agreement, that was signed between the Municipal Council of Kisumu and the Lab Trust, Lab Fund, by the town clerk. This was in the year 2011. 2011. 2011, sorry. So it went in 2011, they are gone.
I think that's a separate question that will be answered separately. It's only talking about how Makasembo and Anderson came into limelight. Yes. But the issue of money, I think it's a different question that was asked. I think it's either you or W majority. So allow him to conclude.
Chair, before I know he's finishing, but I just have a point of order. And this one, I want to ask Waziri Finance, maybe he can answer later.
I'll give another.
It's just related to what he has said, just for information.
Honorable,
I just want to ask Waziri.
Honorable Leader Majority, you have a pen, just note the question.
Maybe he can answer if he. I wanted to ask Waziri Finance. Maybe he can answer later. For information, at what stage does a grant changes to be a loan?
Honorable, it's noted, but I want to request. Requesting that we allow them to respond. If it is something you want to interject that relates to the question, it is okay. But if it's a different question, just note it. I'm going to give the second round before we move forward. So proceed.
Thank you very much. I was coming to the issue of the reconciliation of accounts. No, it's a bit elaborate because it involved huge sums of money and the estates. Then we agreed on the two estates. At the time of devolution, we transferred two estates. Then this case continued, and they said they wanted the money, so we insisted that we do a reconciliation. Because remember, if you go to Arena Estate to date, the tenants paying up to 800 shillings. So when the governor came, Professor assumed office. I remember I was one of the people who went to Nairobi to reconcile the accounts. we insisted that when we normally do our annual fee and the charges, we normally increase the rents even for those estates you don't collect. We did a reconciliation. Actually, the initial figure as at the time, as at the year 2020 or thereabouts, was around 2 billion. We managed to bring the figure down to 900 million because our reconciliation was done on what we projected what they were supposed to have collected and what they didn't collect. It was actually reconciled. The records to that effect at the office in Nairobi. That was done. That is one. Number two, a question has been asked on the issue of Migosi site and sites and service scheme. These are issues that were actually the germanes or even that case that we had with NHC. Remember, they are developed the 5 phases to talk about. Then in 1980s, they brought in the issue of loans for development of Migosi site and service scheme. Now those were loans. The Municipal Council of Kisumu then was a guarantor for those loans. So the loans were taken by individuals. Some of them are known, they're working in town. But for some reason, they messed up the issue of those loan accounts. So when NAC could not pursue those individuals, they decided to load that loan account into this other account. That's why the loan has remained where it is. That's a fact.
Before you proceed, on the same thing, I think the county attorney, you're not doing justice for the members. Are we discussing a loan that is be paid to NHC as a result of Migosi site and scheme, or as a result of the grants that were given for ONDIEK, Makasembo? In other words, one member asked, how did the Makasembo, not Makasembo, but Arena, Arguins Kodek, ONDIEK, and the mosque come into play, when in the letter that is here, they are referring to a loan that was used to develop Migosi site and scheme estate, which you have just mentioned now, that is 1980 coming forward.
Yes.
So I believe the other ones were grants.
There were grants to the NHC, but the NHC decided to give them to municipalities as loans. So it was the argument, the issues that are being brought before the House have been ventilated before the court. There are records of that effect, even the judgment of that effect. These are issues that were actually brought up before the court. But the court, in their own wisdom, the judge in his wisdom decided that no, this is your loan, and lumped it on this account.
Must to know, how is this other states coming on the Migosi issue?
In terms of sewage, road network, or housing, because he has indicated to the committee that individuals were given loans and eventually those loans were transferred to the Municipal Council of Kisumu. I don't know if the municipal was the guarantor to those individuals or what, because the individuals developed houses or developed what? Why did the National Housing Corporation not pursue the individuals? Because if Setu Ching was awarded a loan, Setu Ching should be pursued, because Setu Ching was a physical development in terms of a house. Because I believe if these individuals were awarded loans, they were developing something, even if it was a toilet. Why don't they pursue Setu Ching? And if it was a physical development in terms of roads, network, or sewage network, I believe that one should be transferred to the county government, because the county government, the municipal council, was collecting rates from those individuals. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, this is how this used to work.
The same? On the same?
Inform the House that it is very clear, the background, that the money that is causing this swap came about as a result of the development of Migosi Estate and the scheme. If you look at the background, it's written, County Government of Kisumu inherited from the defunct municipal of Kisumu debts estimated at 1.3 billion owed to National Housing Corporation arising from failure by the defunct municipality to repay loans advanced to it to develop Migosi site and Scheme Estate. That is what is causing this swap. Let me ask, therefore, do we have any agreement in regard to the loan that was advanced to municipality to develop these two estates? I know, as you've said, we are not interrogating you. If you may not have the answer, then maybe you have discovered something that you know, you will go and find out and give us that information. We'll do that together. Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was saying that the issue of the development of Migui Site and Service Scheme was that the municipality will give you land. And remember, when you give you land, you're supposed to develop the houses. But then the municipality developed the issue, the sewerage networks, the reticulation water system was developed by the municipality. So that was how this load came to be on account of municipalities of Kisumu. But then a certain amount was charged on the individuals, small amount was charged on the individual. That's why the municipality became a guarantor. But my point was that the NHC has a judgment of 1.2 billion, which continues to accrue interest at 14% court rates. And as Waziri had said, that right now it could be around 1.6 billion. Now that's my point. Thank you.
There are some areas that are remaining. I think you finalize on the response, then I give another lot.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why the leader of majority was spoiling a very good day for me at the county assembly when I don't have questions. It's very rare. Now he's insisting that I respond. Whether it was a grant or a loan, I think the matter has been described by my colleagues, and whether it changed from a grant or a loan. Mr. Speaker, I said that this case is not different from the many cases that we deal with at the county treasury or at the county government, where all the material facts seem to have been ventilated in court. I would be very happy if this assembly could, find justification for its review of some of these things. But the way we understand it is that all of these issues have been ventilated in court, and the culmination is that there is a court order which forms a legitimate liability on the part of the county government to pay. So for us, we pick it from there. Even the questions of, and somebody asked rents. There was an attempt to do reconciliations of rents that were paid to NHC. And we are aware that those reconciliations were incorporated into court proceedings. All of that culminated into a court order. So if the assembly could have, I don't know, their quasi-judicial or some other powers to review events and facts that preceded the court order, that would be an interesting opportunity. But where we are at the county treasury, we have a court order, we are being told to pay, there's a deal on the table, and we support the deal.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Waziri has given me a good tradition of standing up. It's good. I think I only want to respond on two issues. One of them is a question by the honorable member asking why are we bringing this matter to the assembly now, and under previous circumstances it has never been brought. My answer would be straightforward, is that we felt it's our responsibility to make sure that the county assembly is part and parcel of this journey that we are working together. Clearly, the reason why we are here is that we are requesting also for your indulgence in this particular matter, which clearly indicates that a decision has not been made. We are in the process of seeking a decision. So we have not transferred, and actually that's why we are here. Remember, in the minutes we stated, National Housing Corporation will seek concurrence with their board. County Government of Kisumu first seek cabinet approval and then also seek concurrence from the county assembly. And that's the reason why we are here. we are in the process of seeking that concurrence. We have not made any decision. If by any chance the county assembly says stop, we will have no other reason to proceed with this particular matter. We'll just bring it to a close. So basically, to answer that question is that we are in the process. Then Mheshimiwa asked about public participation. Again, also, the reason why we are here is again also to engage so that in our next step and series of activities, getting to the public would also be the next step, that we work together with you because you are more, you have a higher groundometer. That is, you listen more to the ground than us. Then we participate with you in the public participation before again the final decision is made. So I thought, other than the historical aspect of it, I also give my input in terms of the processes we are taking. And the fact that previously mistakes have been made does again not necessarily mean that we also make the same mistake. So we are trying to correct a situation that probably was not correct previously.
I think I'm taking the second lot, so you start.
Now that the CEC has indicated to us that they have not conducted any public participation meeting with the said affected stakeholders. Now, I concur with your wisdom that this meeting was to be conducted informally. And that brings to my contribution that before we own this document as an assembly, the executive wing of this government needs to conduct a public participation meeting whereby they inform the residents of Kisumu that there is a court decree that we swap ONDIEK estate with the said estates to the National Housing Corporation. And even the arena people that going forward, you will be paying rent to the county government of Kisumu. So that as an assembly, when the majority leader, under your guidance, will be tabling this document in this house, and thereby it becomes a document of this house, we are sure that the due process has been concluded. Mr. Chair, that's my contribution as far as this document is concerned, because as the area residents, I will love to see a public participation exercise whereby I will also contribute and also oversee how the residents of the said estates are contributing towards these issues of which you are requiring the contribution or the indulgence of this house, so that it is be approved, taking into considerations those matters you have highlighted from the executive wing of this government. Otherwise, Chair, I rest my case.
Tony, it looks like you want to say something.
Chair, you see, my thinking is that this house must help the executive. I'm actually thinking that in your own, when you retire and you consider the predicament before us, probably find a way to discuss this, including, of course, the leader of ONDIEK, to have this matter resolved in a way that probably takes it forward. I want to clarify that the court has not directed that ONDIEK be swapped with NHC. And unless my colleagues are a bit disowning what, in all my understanding, has been a full executive decision bearing from history of the discussion to to this point, because the files I have here indicate to me that even at some point in, let's say, 2010, there was even the idea that you give NHC Arena estate. I think there are discussions that even say the value of Arena is too much. The acreage that Arena covers is not worth a swap with NHC. I think there have been other discussions, and the attorney's office is available to bring whatever documentation we can bring in elucidating areas of gaps that may be better in making that negotiation. The court has not said, you guys go take Arena, give it to NHC. Actually, in my office, understood that over time, you had come to the reasonable and rational conclusion that of the assets you had to swap against the 1 billion liability you hold with NHC was ONDIEK. So you can withdraw on that and look at what else can happen. But somehow, because this thing would show me even a number of valuations with all other estates that had been going on. And as I said before, please, including if we have to photocopy all this, I can even leave this original that was the swap in the earlier swap with that was done much way before. I think there is a trove of papers that we can help to bring to that discussion. But just help us, help the executive, and help everybody else, so that I think that loan burden is mitigated.
Honorable, your question is now answered. You still have it?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, part of my question is answered because I wanted to raise a question on the levies that the National Housing Corporation were collecting during the time of the takeover. Whether it was considered when they were negotiating about this debt. And again, if I understood the county attorney well, the county valuer valued this at 700 something million, but the agreement was 980 million. So I don't know whether a consideration was done.
I think you already explained that.
Yes.
You did explain it. Okay, Chair.
You know, the issue of helping the executive does not arise here. Chair, you know, we derive delegated authority. We are here courtesy of the people who elected us. We are not here just Seth Uching or Aduinyang was just found himself in this house. There must be a process we followed to be here. That process is invalidated by your statement, the county attorney, by saying that we should just help the executive. Help them from what perspective? These are policies which are going to directly affect, directly in terms of policy. It's a good policy. We are not saying it's a bad policy. It's a very, very good policy. But why do you fear, county attorney? Why do you fear going to the people whom elected us, then telling them, this is the policy. This is the policy document. Let them participate. Let them utter those statements they want to. Some of them will contribute good statements. Some of them will contribute bad statements. But eventually, bring this document here. Because as a member, we have been vilified. Not once, not twice. In the social media, in the newspapers, in the radio station, in the talk shows, that we are a rubber stamp assembly. That we are just here to brings policies, bring matters into the, we just pass. We want to disqualify that statement, where the people are just saying that we rubber stamp things. County Attorney Waziri Jerome, you have been Principal Secretary in the Ministry of ICT, whereby you are dispensing information and sensitizing the people of the Republic of Kenya on advocacy and the issues to do with public participation, why don't we just conduct a public participation exercise and then bring to us those documents, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair? Then we will validate it. We will disqualify those statements. We will qualify those statements. We will make our contribution to this House. Then we pass this document. Then the county government can go further and do those issues you have said, land, physical use, development, those things you have said. Then the county government can clock revenue. Because, Mr. Chair, our own source revenue is one thing. And we don't want to delay these things by not following the due process. Waziri, Accountant Mr. Loka, just go and conduct a public participation to exercise. What if the residents go to court? What if a citizen just decides to go to court and seek judicial review over this matter, that our indulgence was not, the assembly father went and approved it, without asking us? What will we say as an assembly? We will be doing great injustice and disservice to the residents of Kisumu. And this is why the county government of Kisumu fails. Mr. Chair, the county government of Kisumu has never won a single case in court. And Ogango has been there since time immemorial. He has these tips in his fingers here. If you ask Ogango anything to do with the judicial review cases going on in court today, he will tell you everything. Even the county attorney, you will be surprised that you are sitting in an office and you don't know what is happening there. But let us follow the due process. The courts always disqualify our issues. Mr. Speaker, there are even issues which are going on, even without the indulgence of the county attorney. And there's a case in my ward where the consent is entered, deposited in court, and the court pronounced itself without the indulgence of the county attorney. And I have it, and he knows what I'm talking about. So when I'm talking from the perspective of experience. My pleading is that let's just follow the due process. So that's an assembly, when we rubber stamp it through the chair and through the speaker, and when the majority leader will be presenting it, it's the tradition that I second. What am I seconding? As the MC of Market Milimani Ward. I'm seconding a process which has not been followed.
Your point is taken. I want to ask 4 questions to give a guidance on the way forward. Number 1, what is the worst thing that will happen if the assembly do not consider this? The worst thing that can happen. I think that one will make us proceed. The second question, I think the county attorney raised it, and I like how he raised it, that it's not the court decisions that are ONDIEK could be the one to be swapped. It could be Arena, it could be Mosque, it could be Arguez Kodek, it could be another thing. It could be even paying the money. And so it's important to understand how we arrived at suggesting ONDIEK and not the other ones. Now, the third question, the proofs for these loans that we're talking about. In as much as you had gone to court, you would discuss it, is it possible to have these proofs? Because when assembly, assuming, is concurring with what you are saying, they must also have evidence. I mean, if somebody was to go to court today, would you go and say that, this matter had been discussed in another court somewhere? You still have to produce evidence. So is there a proof for these loans? In your statement here, in the recommendations, recommendation number 2, Cabinet to approve formation of a committee to investigate and develop requisite modalities to collect debts and arrears owed by developers and the beneficiaries of Bigosi site and scheme estate to recover the loss the county has incurred as a result of transfer of ONDIEK. It's a very heavy statement. And in line with what I'm talking about here, the proof of the loans, what they did, and how are they linked to what we are discussing in this recommendation here. Then lastly, County Attorney, there's something called bad debt. I'm not very concerned with the policies and the frameworks on bad debt. We are talking here about a debt of 55 years. I mean, could it be considered as a bad debt? 55 years. I can swear I don't know anything about the policies or the frameworks surrounding bad debt, but I know there's something called bad debt. Thank you. You have a question? Can you add so that it's done together 100%? Can you proceed? Yes, proceed. We are not unanswered. You can just talk.
Chair, there was a question about tenants who manage to purchase. They've not addressed that. Houses within facilities that are going to be handed over.
You summarize. Now there are 6 in number. There are 6 questions in number.
Yourself, Mr. Chair, on the worst thing that could happen if this is not progressed and realized. The worst thing that could happen is that the county's books of accounts will remain in bad shape, because as it is, they are, as we speak, because these debts are significant. And you know, counties are moving towards raising their own money. You saw the way the county government of Nairobi is attempting to borrow by releasing an infrastructure bond. We ourselves have been talking for ages about getting some private capital into the lakefront and so on. What matters anytime a county goes to borrow is the financial health of the county. It's not just audit opinions. Actually, the most important thing is the size of your debt and whether you're able to pay it. So we will continue to remain in very bad standing as a county government if we don't sort out some of these debts. That is why I agree with my colleague, the county attorney, that although the court did not order that we give up our estate in swap for the debt, the court has already imposed a liability on us, which is a debt that now must now enter our books. It makes a lot of sense to us if that can be settled and taken out of our books by a fair, because again, the Auditor General will come and check that did we, even as we approved the debt swap, were we prudent? Because there's always a question of prudence. Were we prudent in the manner we used that resource? And the prudence is going to be found in the valuation. And that's why we are saying that for us at the Treasury, up to the point we have reached, it is still very prudent to actually trade off this estate for the debt. It is prudent because the values are in our favor. But the other question which has been asked, which I wanted to address, is what about paying? Why not just pay the debt? Again, that is an option. It will depend on the payment plans and the cash flows. As it is right now, of course, one of the reasons why we prefer a debt swap is that our cash flows are highly constrained. We cannot afford to pay. But if it is a resolution of the leadership of this county, both the assembly and the executive, that say for a couple of financial years, we would not budget for significant development spending because we want to recapture our assets. If that is agreed upon and it is infused in the county budget estimates, and the controller also agrees that when you pay off a development, a pending bill on a development project, it will be considered as development spending. And so you will meet your fiscal threshold in development spending. That is a decision that we are open to. But the reason we support this is we are assuming that if this debt was to be paid, it has to be paid within the current cash flows, which cannot afford it. The final thing I wanted to say is, the question I wanted to respond to is the bad debt, whether this is a bad debt or not, raised by the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the thing about bad debt is that the person who declares a debt bad is not the creditor, it is the debtor. So the only person who can declare this a bad debt is NHC. And so they decide to write it off their books. Then we are relieved of the obligation to pay. But we who owe, we cannot owe the money and then on our side declare it a bad debt. The only option that was available to us, and we are still trying to do that with respect to other debts that are not yet at this stage, was to use the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee and see how these things can be resolved within that IGTRC framework of the relationship between the national government and the county government. But that is for things that have not reached this stage in terms of a court order. Not an order to swap, but an order to pay. Otherwise, the simple answer is that, yes, there is a provision for declaring debts bad, but that can only be done by the debtor and not the creditor.
Thank you. Maybe you didn't get me well. I didn't say that it's us to declare it bad. I just wanted to understand the legal framework, if there is, when somebody can declare a debt bad. I'm asking that because maybe there are some provisions in which National Housing Corporation should now consider, if there is provision. Like I know the banks, they know. They talk of certain years, then you can say no. It's known that after some time, even record keeping, after 7 years, it's known that now it's very difficult to ask for some certain records, Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. And in this case, maybe what comes into play is the PFM Act. And that's why I think as a county, both the Assembly and the Executive, we should continue to pursue this. Maybe this is a good time. What happens with public or government institutions is that even if the boards declared a debt bad and decided that they were going to forget it and get it out of their books, that declaration must be approved by the CS of the National Treasury. Just like in the county where debts, fees, charges cannot be waived by any other office other than the CCM for the county treasury, is the same thing. All ministries, government agencies, parastatals and so on, cannot waive debts unless with the approval of the National Treasury. And sometimes the National Treasury also does not waive unless with the approval of the cabinet. So it's a process. The board of NHC is not in any way capable of declaring it bad and waiving it. But the political process, especially driven by the National Treasury, can do it.
I was just asking that before you proceed. The treasury is you there. You know what I mean. I wanted to ask, Waziri George, is it only bad books is why we have to agree with this? I mean, we have been in bad books. So there is nothing else that we can lose. apart from being in bad books?
Of course, it depends on the mode of enforcement. Some of us are paranoid about this. We have suffered enforcement that has been very inconveniencing to ourselves. So if, for example, the NHC decided, because it's a debt, we are not paying, so they'll progress it. Nowadays, I know a little bit, so it ceases to be an order. Then they go to court and get an order of mandamus, forcing us to pay, isn't it, Tony? Something. And then, if we don't pay, after the court issues orders of mandamus, they go and make an application for contempt. And when they make an application for contempt, it depends on who they cite in the contempt. And the people they cite in the contempt would possibly be the county secretary and the CCM for finance. Depends on how far they want to go with it. And the next thing is, people will be locked in. But if they don't go for that kind of enforcement, I don't know which other enforcement is available to them. I don't know whether they can go to court and seek to auction county property so that they get the debt. I'm not sure, but for me it's just the books. But I think there is also the risk in the enforcement and what might happen to county property or even county officials during the enforcement.
So we are not going to lose Arena, we are not going to lose Mosque, we are not going to lose Arguin Codex. It's only the fear of order of mandamus. But I think that's a civil case. Nobody has been jailed for owing somebody. Also, presentation, yeah, because like Honorable Setkanga is suggesting that you go to the public. What do you tell the public? What do you lose? Yeah, what do you lose? What's the worst thing that will happen if we don't deal with the matter? I believe that is what you are supposed to be presenting to the public, even if you are to go for public participation. Otherwise, nobody would see the importance of what we are discussing. There must be a tangible reason touching on the worst things that shall happen to the county if we don't deal with the matter. I saw some hands here. Honorable Lumumba, then Pamela.
Yeah, from what Waziri Finance has said, I think I see from where it's coming from is partly personal because of the experience that he had that day. So he's going to defend himself and even the county. Let me propose or ask a question. You know, when you are arbitrating, did you explore the possibility of asking the National Housing Corporation to waive the interest when it comes to government? To some extent, what is normally agreed upon is to waive the interest. And if the interest is waived, I believe we'll be having very minimal debts, because what I can see from 980 million or from 1 billion, it is inclusive of interest. That also. Then why don't we explore further to have the interest rate waived? It is very possible. Even me, I'm negotiating with the government a certain debt. They're telling me, for us to pay you, can you waive the interest and we pay the government? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can still see room in this case. If we ask for a review of the case based on a few facts, if we ask for a review that they surrender the estates to us, we collect the rent, and we are able to start paying the amount they are requesting in installments, I don't know whether there is still option for review. Can we ask for a review? And can we ask the NSC to surrender our 5 estates so that the county may collect rents from those estates and start paying the amount they are requesting for? Secondly, can we seek the authority of the CS, Treasury, I don't think we are closed. Can we seek the authority of the CS Treasury? If they can waive the debt for us, because he's the person who is able to waive the debt for us. He's in the position of waiving the debt for us. Can we seek those options first before we surrender our estate to the NSC? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I think mine will be different. Mr. Speaker, I think we are here because we fear that we have been losing cases. So my appeal to attorney, what's your plan so that we'll not be losing cases onwards? This is a process of losing cases.
I think that plan can come in another discussion. We are dealing with the issue of the transfer, not the losing of cases or winning of cases. So we don't need to answer that. Honorable Guard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was here earlier, but I left for some engagement, which was very crucial. But I was very much interested in knowing some of the issues. I just asked my two colleagues that they're telling me it's not part of the discussion. I wanted to know from the executive if the evaluation of ONDIEK estate has been done to date, so that we know this is like paying a debt. And if paying debt, we need to know first, have they done the evaluation of ONDIEK estate? Because they can never be specific as a National Housing Corporation that they strictly want ONDIEK. We can give them many other things so long as it equates to the value of the money they are, we are owing them. So have they done the evaluation of ONDIEK estate and the other 4 estates that they are holding, so that we know the cost of what we have? Then the Assembly and the Executive can make a decision on what we can surrender to the NHC as vis-a-vis what they want. Because we have agreed to pay, but then do we have the equal amount? Because they want to take the prime one vis-a-vis what we can offer. Or we agree on how we are going to pay going forward. Thank you.
Sorry, it's good you say that you are out. That matter has been discussed. They presented it. Yes, they did evaluation. Waziri, there were remaining some 3 questions, and the 2 that came. Avoid the one that's not in line with what we are discussing, so that we conclude. Once you leave, members will remain behind so that we agree on the way forward, that we'll communicate to the executive before we move forward. So, okay, proceed.
Thank you very much. I take it on the good counsel of the House that public participation involving the affected persons is fundamental. From the space I have, I will advise on that, Mheshimiwa. I agree with you. I'll advise on that. Subsequent to that, I should say that before the Friday, my office should send you the judgment of the judgment that the National Housing Corporation holds on this. And as I was telling you, although we have now reached this stage of an out-of-court debt swap, initially, on their own, they had a case. Remember, they tried to move out people here from the 90s to say, we want to take back our houses, move. And the municipality went to court, stayed it, and there's a long case. That case settled it at the disadvantage of the county government, in that 1.2 billion, I think the judgment was entered for about 1.2 billion. That was the judgment they entered, and we will send that to you this week. Then when the swap, when LAP Fund was assuming Makasempo, they went to court to say, no, not even Makasempo should go. And that is how we ended up in the case now that say, then show us what you give us in full settlement of that liability. Now, give or take, according to National Housing Corporation now, they are actually foregoing about 600 million of what otherwise they would have claimed, because their judgment still gives them interest. But they said, let the interest go. Our valuations were at about 600 million. And then this was reconciled with another valuation, putting it at about 980. And the discussion then was, we take the 980, I think 900. We take the 980 to be the settlement sum. No more interest. The interest, we give them up. No more claim. From your side, we give up the 3 housing estates. So on a bigger picture, I could say, looking at it as a resident of this county and for generations that we serve, maybe we must insist that if it is to go, what is there for Kisumu to gain? So not just the stability in the debt settlement, but I think that you were discussing that when they take ONDIEK, what is next? And I think they had said they would redevelop it to a standard that otherwise, even if we left it there now, for real, it would not be the standard in tandem with your requirements to date. So when is that development to happen? Because I think you need to explain this, because they even said that there would be a plan to have it developed, to have the development begin soonest possible, but before the elections, before the next elections, to avoid any disruptions. Can they be part of the public participation? We can say then that is also a condition, be part of the public participation. Because I think they were asked, how have you done this elsewhere? And they said that they can make a vote for some modicum of compensation and follow up so that no violations happens in any evictions or in any anticipated relocations in the area. So I think on the bigger picture, the county stands to gain if you are able to settle this 1 billion debt, because by far it is the largest debt that I see in my office.
Thank you very much. And I think I'll just pick to where Wakili has left. There was the question about what happens to the people who are resident there. During our final discussion with the NHC team, they were very clear that within their framework, they have what they call the project affected persons framework, how they deal with, because this is not the only project, they have their policies on how they deal with people who are existing in a project they want to implement. They even have options of paying. So they said, since they don't know the situation as is now, once all this agreement is in place, they will move in, do an assessment, and actually pick within their policy frameworks how they compensate the current people who are going to be affected by this particular project. And basically that is what Wakili has said, but that is something that we had raised up with them because we were equally concerned about that particular aspect of managing people who are currently living in there. Secondly, I would also want to mention that we are really open to the public participation element and not to preempt if it would be one of your directive that probably having received your letters, then we need to consider that you do this before we make a decision. We'll be more than willing to take that and proceed with the public participation aspect of it. And like Wakili has said, even if it means bringing on board the NHC team so that they even talk to the people who will be affected in terms of how they normally implement what people normally refer to as PAPs, Project Affected Persons.
What is the point of order? We want to conclude. Well, Seth, maybe you were not in when I started. I said we are not interrogating this team. This is an informal meeting. We are going to make decision on what we require, and we will communicate. So the next meeting that we'll have will be formal. So just just hold on. Once they leave, you will tell me those things so that we do a resolution. Yeah, I'll give you time to mention it. Yeah. I think we come to the end. I want to give the chair of the Lands Committee to make his remarks. But I request that once they leave, please don't leave. Remain behind.
Thank you. Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think much of the information that we as a committee and the leadership wanted to get concerning the debt swap is already received. As a committee, I think we will still have to do much interrogation, and we will make a recommendation and determination on where to put this matter. But again, I'm happy because you brought the two waziris on board in this conversation. One thing that I wanted Waziri George to tell us, though this question could have come earlier, is that, Bwana Chair, the four estates, at the moment we know that is not giving the county any revenue, and if this swap is done, we believe and we know that the three remaining estates will be a basket for revenue for this county. But again, when you will be giving us the documents that are required, also let us know how much, if this is approved, how much we are going to get from Arena, Mosque, and Arguings, Kudek. The three remaining estates, how much the county is going to get in terms of our own source revenue, and the value of the lands. That is also very key that the committee will also want to know. Thank you, Chair.
I think we appreciate, Waziri, your time. If something went wrong, don't feel offended. It's for the purpose of ensuring that we move forward appropriately. So we want to release you. We'll remain behind to make some discussion, but I promise that you will be getting our communication before we proceed. Otherwise, thank you so much.